August 16, 1944. Dawn had not yet broken over the Norman hedgerows when SS Obergruppenführer Paul Hausser stepped into the damp concrete bunker near Saint-Lambeau. 64 years old, right eye gone since the Moscow winter of '41, the men still called him Papa. On the map table lay the acetate overlay of death. The 7th Army, 120,000 men, 4 shattered panzer divisions, was being squeezed into a pocket barely 15 miles long and 8 miles wide. Canadians hammering from the north, Americans thrusting from the south, Poles sealing the east. One road out, the narrow corridor between Trun and Chambois. At 04:17, a telegram arrived from the Wolf's Lair, Hitler's signature, 4 words that froze every staff officer in the room. 7th Army will stand, counterattack at dawn. Hausser read it twice, then a third time. He looked at his chief of staff, Otto Baum, and spoke the quietest sentence of the war. If we obey, the army dies by tomorrow night. He had fought since 1914. He had seen Verdun, the Somme, Barbarossa. He knew when a position was hopeless. At 04:45, he did what no German general had done since 1940. He deliberately disobeyed the Führer. General retreat. We move tonight. Destination, the Dives River before first light tomorrow. The staff stared. Disobeying Hitler meant the noose. Hausser shrugged. Better the noose than annihilation. By noon, the roads were already clotting. Tiger II tanks of Schwer Panzerabteilung 503, 60 tons of steel, sat nose to tail with horse-drawn supply wagons straight out of 1870. The Wehrmacht in microcosm, a modern head grafted onto a medieval body. Men of the 277th Infantry Division marched with boots rotting off their feet, eyes fixed skyward for the Jabos. Every aircraft engine sent thousands diving into the ditches. Major Hans von Luck, 21st Panzer Division, drove his Kübelwagen up and down the column, screaming himself hoarse, "Keep moving! If we stop, we are dead!" Rain began to fall in sheets. The one paved road turned to grease. A Panther tank slid sideways, crushing a field kitchen and 20 men. At 1900, the first bridges over the Dives went up in flames, blown by German engineers to stop pursuit. Too early, thousands were still on the wrong side. Hausser stood on a hill south of Chambois, watching his army dissolve. He lit a cigar with shaking hands. One of his aides asked, "Herr General, what happens if the armies bring up their artillery?" Hausser exhaled smoke and said the truest sentence any German spoke that week. "Then God help us all." August 18 to 19. The pocket shrank to the size of a Berlin suburb. The escape corridor was now a single road, the N179 from Chambois to St. Lambert, flanked by steep hills the Canadians nicknamed the Killing Ground. 10,000 vehicles, 30,000 horses, 120,000 men, all trying to squeeze through a gap barely wide enough for 2 trucks abreast. The rain never stopped. Men slept standing up. Horses sank to their bellies in mud and were shot where they fell. At noon on the 19th, the sky finally cleared. The Jabos came in waves, Typhoons with rockets, P-47s with 850 cals spitting 800 rounds per second. A single Typhoon pilot, Pierre Klosterman, claimed 14 vehicles in one sortie. He wrote in his logbook, "It was not war, it was extermination." On the ground, SS Panzer Grenadiers of the 12th SS Hitlerjugend formed human chains to drag burning trucks off the road so the column could keep moving. 17-year-old boys with Panzerfausts stood on hilltops, firing at aircraft until they were machine-gunned from wingtip to wingtip. Hans von Luck found a traffic jam 6 miles long. He climbed on a Tiger II and used its turret as a pulpit. "If you stop, you die here. Move or burn." A young lieutenant asked him, "Sir, where is the Luftwaffe?" Von Luck laughed until he cried. By nightfall, the corridor was lit by burning vehicles every 100 meters, an unbroken chain of fire from Trun to Vimoutiers. Men began abandoning weapons, then uniforms, then dignity. Officers shot deserters until they ran out of ammunition, then joined them. At one crossroads near Moissy, Canadian artillery observers counted 187 destroyed vehicles in a 400-meter stretch. The wreckage was so dense that bulldozers would be needed before tanks could pass. 3 weeks later, Hausser moved his command post 4 times in 12 hours. Each time he arrived, the map showed the pocket smaller. He sent a final radio message to Army Group B at 0214 on August 20th. 7th Army no longer exists as a formation. Remnants attempting individual breakout. Request permission to surrender remaining forces. The reply never came.
10 miles south, inside a canvas tent near Argenton, Captain Robert Parker, 15th Corps Fire Direction Center, drank coffee and worked a slide rule. No mud, no screaming, only the scratch of pencils and a low hum of generators. Parker's job was simple: make every German grid square cease to exist at a precise minute chosen in advance. The weapon was time on target. Traditional artillery, batteries fire one after another. First shell warns the enemy, subsequent shells kill 90% fewer men. American solution: calculate exact flight times for every battery so every shell lands in the same second. No warning, no survival window. At 13:55, Parker plotted the crossroads east of Chambois, grid 44 Bravo, where German traffic was bumper to bumper. Battery A, 155mm long toms, 12.4 miles away, 48-second flight time. Battery B, 105mm, 4.3 miles, 18 seconds. Battery C, 8-inch guns, 8.1 miles, 35 seconds. He worked backward from H-hour, 1400 hours exactly. Firing times: Battery A, 13:59:12. Battery C, 13:59:25. Battery B, 13:59:42. Every watch in 15th Corps was synchronized each morning to the BBC time pips. A 2-second error meant shells scattered over a kilometer, useless. At 13:59:12, the first long toms recoiled. 33 seconds later, the 105s fired. 48 seconds after that, the first shells arrived. To the Germans eating cold rations at the crossroads, the sky simply exploded. 700 shells in 4 seconds. The overpressure ruptured lungs before men heard the sound. Parker never looked up. He was already calculating the next target, grid 55 Charlie, for 16:35. In 24 hours, 15th Corps fired 81,347 rounds into an area the size of Central Park. Guns glowed cherry red. Crews worked bare-chested, feeding shells like coal into furnaces. The Red Ball Express, 6,000 trucks running non-stop, delivered 19,847 tons of supplies that day. Ammunition never ran short. German veterans who survived Stalingrad broke down weeping. One SS captain wrote in his diary, "We are not fighting men, we are fighting mathematics."
August 20th, 1635. Paul Hausser was walking along the Dives riverbank with his staff, trying to organize a final breakout. He had refused a vehicle, wanted to be with his men. Captain Parker's next TOT mission was Grid 55 Charlie. Exact location, the exact spot Hausser chose to stand. At 16:34:55, the first shells left their tubes. Hausser heard nothing. The shells arrived supersonic. A single 155mm shard took him in the face, shattered his jaw, exited through his shoulder. He collapsed into the mud beside a dead horse. His adjutant screamed for a medic. There were none left. They lifted the army commander, the highest-ranking Waffen-SS officer in Normandy, onto the rear deck of a Stug 3 assault gun and strapped him down with belts. Blood poured from his mouth. He could not speak. As the assault gun lurched toward the Seine, Hausser stared up at the gray sky. He saw the future. Not defeat by soldiers, defeat by assembly lines, by slide rules, by truck convoys that never slept, by a nation that could fire 80,000 shells in a day and still have ammunition left for tomorrow. By August 22, the pocket was silent. Official German casualty return: 10,000 dead, 50,000 prisoners, 500 tanks destroyed or abandoned, 7,000 vehicles, 20,000 horses. Eisenhower walked the battlefield on August 23 and wrote, "It was possible to walk for hundreds of yards, stepping nothing but dead flesh." Paul Hausser survived, lived until 1972. In his memoirs, he defended his men to the last page. But in private, friends said he kept one photograph on his desk, an aerial reconnaissance picture of the Chambois corridor after the battle, a moonscape of craters and steel. On the back, he had written a single sentence in his spidery handwriting: "Hier wurde der Krieg zur Physik."